Hello everybody. So today I'm going to start a series on economics, and we're just going to talk about some just core ideas of economics and economic systems and give you an idea of some various things that we're going to talk about throughout the year. So first I would just want you to think about a quick question of what role do you think economics plays in your life? And a lot of people define economics differently, and some people think numbers, or some people think more practical things. But really the truth of the matter is that it impacts everything. No matter what you're thinking, it is involved in your life in a variety of different ways. And we'll talk about a lot of that in class, but today we're going to get into just some core ideas of economics. And really, when you look at most economic systems, the key thing that you need to understand is scarcity, okay? And the concept here with scarcity is that all people and countries have unlimited needs and wants. And I'm going to get to wants and needs a little bit later. The problem is that we do not possess the resources, labor, and time, which I'll refer to again, to fulfill those needs. Therefore, nations must make choices, and that is scarcity. Scarcity does not mean shortage. A shortage of a good means that temporarily you are lacking something, no matter what that good is. Scarcity means that there is a finite amount of something. You know, we have a finite amount of oil. We have a finite amount of iron. You know, we could find more, but we can't say create more. And that is really important to understand, because ultimately, what economics is all about, whether it's your own personal finance or decisions made at a corporate or national level, is it is a decision-making process. You have to think about things. You have to look at your scarce resources. Most of you, your scarcest resource in many cases could be money. There are specific things that you can and can't do based on the money that you have. And you then have to make a determination of what to do with those scarce resources. And really what we look at with these core things, again, are labor resources, also often referred to as land, quote unquote, and time. And if you look at the scale there on the right, I think that really does show what scarcity is all about, particularly in capitalist-based systems, which most of the world has. And you see all of those different things that people need, whether they're concrete things like food and clothing and shelter, which of course are your three core needs, or even things like security, affection, convenience, all of these types of things. We have these unlimited human wants, but we only have a specific amount of land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship. So I break it down to things like labor, right? There's only so much labor that we have. We have a specific amount of people. We have what those people are capable of doing, and we have that in scarce amounts. Then I have resources, and that, if you look on the right there, that is where you'll get things like land and capital. So land are the, those hard resources like water and iron and things like that. And capital is basically money. And we only have a finite amount. Yeah, sure, we have those super billionaires, but they're like 1% of the world, or actually less than 1% of the world. Most of us have a finite amount of money with which to work. And so again, we have to be smart with it. And finally, you have time. Now, time is really, really tricky, because time is as valuable as you make it. You have to really, and I think what smart people and smart businesses do is they look at time and they really try to figure out what is the most efficient use of that time. And we'll talk about that concept of efficiency later on in my subsequent videos, but understanding that we have a limited amount of time and how efficiently are we going to use it. Less time on video games and TV and your phones, I'm going to throw that out there. You can do a lot more. Now, when you look at scarcity and we look at these things, basically, when you have an economic system, your economic system is looking to answer three economic questions: what to make, how to make it, and for whom to make it. And the different economic systems that I am going to be talking about in my future videos seek to answer those questions. And really, we can boil that down. So what is the product that we are making, or what is the service that is being provided? How is that product and service going to be achieved, if you will? How will it be constructed? What are the tools that you need? What is the time that you need? And then finally, we have a target audience, okay? Who is going to get that product? Okay, what is the socioeconomic status of that person? What is the gender of that person? What is the age of that person? Who are we targeting with our products, okay? And so when we talk about some of our broad economic systems, which I'm going to talk about in my subsequent videos again, which are going to be traditional economies, command or communist economies, and market economies, those are the three questions that drive them. And in answering those three questions, we have to do things called trade-offs, okay? As we have our little kid here trading a juice box for a cupcake. We can't do everything at the same time. And in fact, because of our scarce resources, we can't have everything that we want. So we have to do trade-offs. You can either afford to do one thing or the other. You have the time to do one thing or the other. You're not always going to get a trade-off right. Sometimes you're going to do item A instead of item B, and it turns out you didn't pick the right one. This is why we have to think before we make economic decisions. We need to think before we spend money. We need to think before we start a business, okay? We have to have a plan in place because you can't do everything, okay? And so this is what I want you to do right now. Write in your notes here. I want you, and you're going to write these in your notes and be ready to discuss them. I want you to think of a trade-off that you've recently made, that you had a decision to make. It could be financial, or it could be otherwise. It could be, something doing with your time or something like that. And so I want you to think of a trade-off that you've done in your life. It doesn't have to be like 2 minutes ago. It could be last year, something like that. And you're going to write that trade-off down, okay? You had to pick between A and B. I decided to do item A, but I couldn't do item B. Like a great example is like some people may choose to get a job instead of participating in a specific extracurricular activity because, you can't do both. And then I want you to assess that trade-off. Okay, I want you to tell me if you feel that you benefited from that decision, why or why not. And in your notes, when you make sure like circle this or highlight it, label it trade-off, just so I can see where we're at, okay? And it gives us a good thing to use as discussion in class tomorrow. Because when we're looking at trade-offs, we do have to look at something called wants and needs. On the left, that is the original Apple symbol. Okay, I actually like that one. I liked all the different colors than just the silver one today is nice, but but we have to look at wants and needs. When we're making these trade-offs, and this is the same thing. Do we need to provide for our own wants? Do we need to provide for needs? Do economies need to provide for wants, or do they need to provide for needs? The fact of the matter is that if you are smart, you will take care of your needs first, and then in moderation, look at your wants. But don't try to turn a want into a need, or you're going to end up broke. Write that down. Don't turn wants into needs, or else you're going to end up broke. Just trying to help you. And finally, when we look at this, these economic systems, we are going to need to understand economics because it will allow us to understand culture. It will allow us to understand people's day-to-day lives. This is just a rough map that talks about, high-income economies, middle-income economies, or low-income economies. And these are going to be important things to understand because when you understand a nation's economic standing, that allows you to understand whether or not there are, say, a prevalence of disease in an area. Because if you don't have a strong economy, typically healthcare is lacking, and then you have disease issues. Sometimes they can see with conflict and war. What you often see is a driver, if you will, of war and often civil conflict are poor economies. All right. Do these nations have resources that they can trade? Okay. Do they have goods that they can trade with one another and thus make money? Or do they not have goods to trade with each other? And if they don't, then there are other things in that nation that they're going to struggle with. Okay, so hopefully this gives you a good general introduction to economics, some of the big picture ideas. We'll get a lot more into class, and in a couple of my next videos, we'll get into some specific systems that exist in the world today, okay? So hopefully you learned a little something here, guys. Take care, and I'll see you soon.